Hey, welcome back to F64 Lunch Bunch. When we started this on Monday, we didn't know what to expect. We have come up with a ton of ideas thanks to a stellar panel here, as well as great guests. I'm going to start with our guest panelist today. That's Ann Geddes. Now, she's down in the bottom corner of my screen, but she's got a baseball hat on backwards and a white blouse. So, Ann, wave.
Hello, hi.
Welcome.
I'm just trying to figure out how to stop text.
Welcome. And then we've got Steve Brazill in my top corner, and Don Komarechka and Larry Becker. And Chamira was tied up yesterday, but she's back today.
Happy to be back.
And we've got one goal here, and that's just to get a conversation going on ideas. You've got the Q&A down below for any questions you've got that come up. But as we get started today, I want to remind everybody, Steve and I had a conversation yesterday, and a friend of his made a comment about people that are sheltering in place. And it really is good. The concept of shelter in place applies to your health, your family, and your physical well-being. It does not mean you've got a shelter in place in terms of your business, your marketing, your skill set. There are so many things that have come up in the last 3 days, and there'll be more of them today, to help everybody take up the time with creative things that are going to help your business along, because just because we're in downtime right now, it doesn't mean that it's got to come to a complete halt. And we all know photographers and friends that are out there right now walking around like a deer caught in your headlights. And what do we do now? So let's get rolling. I'd like to start. Oh, go ahead, Don.
No, I was going to say, Skip, I want to just mention something. I've got a contraption here that I think everybody can make with stuff around the house. And if you've been into photography for a number of years, this might be very helpful for you. So this contraption is fairly simple. I'm using a series of extension tubes. You can use a toilet paper tube. We all have too much toilet paper right now anyhow. And on
some people do.
And on the front of this, I have some tie clips with some craft leather on the side. You can use paper clips or whatever it happens to be. This is a DIY film scanner. So what I would do is, this length is the working distance of my macro lens. If you have any macro lens or anything close to that, use a paper towel tube if it's a little bit longer, whatever you've got to do. And then what I can do with that is I can take a frame of film or a number of frames of film, and I can just slide in that frame of film. Of course, I'd adjust it properly. And then now I can digitize that attached to my camera. All I have to do is point that at my computer screen. And my computer screen just bring up Notepad or a word processor, big white blob. That's your light source. And now you can start digitizing your old negatives or slides in a very easy and convenient way. If you've been putting this off and you've got time on your hands, let those old gems come back to life.
You could even just set your wallpaper
I want to know
white.
how does the youngest kid on this entire panel even know what film is?
Yeah.
Yeah, not to mention slides. I mean,
Yeah, exactly. But I would just set my wallpaper to white.
Yep.
And that way you got a nice backlight going on there. Great idea, man.
Yep.
You needed
There
your
you go.
propeller hat for that.
I did.
Our fridges were full of that.
Yeah.
I missed that. Sorry.
The days.
Sorry, and say that again?
Once upon a time, our fridges were full of film.
That's right.
There used to be film on one side, wine on the other. Ah, well.
Well, I
Well,
found
now there's more room for the wine.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. I found a roll of film the other day. I think I've heard stories about how long the latent image will last on a roll of film. Don will know. But I found a roll of film that's probably 20 years old. It was 120. That now I need to find a lab that'll print it and see what's on it.
I'll do it for you, Skip. I got it all here.
All right, there it is. Hey, let's start. Let's get the ball rolling with Ann. And for those of you that don't know Ann, I'm not going to go into her background. I'm just going to tell you to go Google it, because we'll use up all her time talking about the accolades in her career. But one of the aspects that I love the most, besides her being a photographer, an artist, an author, mom, mother, well, that mom and mother are the same thing. Sorry. Mom, wife, partner, all those things. one of the things that she's done an incredible amount of, and I don't think a lot of you realize it, is she has raised millions of dollars over the years for children's diseases. Am I right? You were a spokesman or still a spokesperson for UNICEF?
Yeah, no, I'm as ambassador for March of Dimes and, sorry? Oh, yeah. My husband here is.
Well, I told Cal he's welcome to join in.
No, don't encourage him, right? No, I'm a global advocate also for the United Nations Foundation's Shot at Life initiative, where they get vaccines to children in countries where they're most needed. And not a lot of people know, but like one child dies every 20 seconds from a vaccine preventable illness. And so, you know, and Cal and I, my husband and I have done a lot of work ever since my first calendars and greeting cards towards raising awareness of child abuse and neglect. And more recently, did I mention March of Dimes? Yeah, they're a fantastic organisation that really centres around the health of pregnant women and a lot of premature babies. And I've been doing a lot of shoots, campaigns for various countries, raising awareness of meningococcal disease. And that's been going on for the last 5 years. So I've met some amazing people, you know, it's just been absolutely incredible. And it's such a privilege to be able to, you know, get to know families and, you know, of children who have suffered like that. And we're all still in touch, you know. You never know in your life where you're going to be meeting incredibly special people. And wow, I've just met so many of them.
Well, I'd love if you could take what you've done on a very large scale. And if you think about everybody that's listening now, you're all in communities that have nonprofits that need support. What are some of the things that you did that made these programs successful that people could do now in terms of building relationships and scaling down to a program that they might want to get involved in their own community, especially right now while everybody's got time on their hands?
Yeah, well, you know, it's a little bit hard at the moment because people are not, you know, letting photographers into hospitals and things like that. Everyone's very wary of that sort of thing. And of course, all shoots have closed down and, you know, particularly with my subject matter of little babies, you know, I'm not sure when that's actually going to recover, but there's always something that you can do in your local community. I was very fortunate with the meningococcal campaigns in that I was approached by, you know, one of the big drug companies because there are 5 strains of meningococcal disease and the vaccination, the general vaccination for meningococcal disease only covers 4 strains. And so they had finally come up with the vaccine for the B strain, which is the strain that most people suffer from now. And so, you know, I did a global campaign and it was wonderful. Like we had a 9-month-old baby from Canada all the way up to, we have 7 or 8 different countries, all the way up to a 25-year-old from Texas, Jamie. And, you know, it was incredibly gratifying for me to have the families say that, you know, a lot of these children had amputations and quite severe damage in all sorts of ways to their bodies. And it was really nice that the families were saying to me, as soon as we found out you were involved, then we thought everything's going to be fine. And I think what I'm getting at is that sense of trust that your community needs to have in you, in that they can see your values and trust in your values. And, you know, from my point of view, say, you know, I photographed a little 5-year-old with no arms and no legs. And it's a big thing for families to actually put their child into a global campaign when they've had that sort of loss. And so, you know, that was one of the most gratifying things from my whole career. You know, I thought, well, Anne, if you've been photographing you know, all of these different campaigns and babies and calendars and everything for 30 years. And people, sometimes I used to think, I wonder if people know how much I really care about this and they're not just cute babies. And it was really gratifying to know that a lot of people really did understand where I'm coming from. So you can just do something small within your community, because something small is absolutely huge to one or two people, right? And if you can just touch a couple of people with your work and have you feel better about yourself, then it's certainly worthwhile.
Feeling better about yourself, I think, is something that we all need a little bit of right now when we're kind of drowning in our own anxiety, as we have a lot of uncertainty in our minds. But at the same time, that can come in so many different ways. Yes, you can better yourself, but what if you better your community? And those are really wonderful words. I think to myself, I have a family here. My wife is a nurse, and I'm very thankful that she is she's teaching students right now. She's actually on a call upstairs, and she is doing teleconferencing because she's usually in a long-term care facility with students, and of course they can't be there right now. And so I look at all of those first responders, and I've seen some photos of the bruises on people's faces from wearing masks for 12 hours a day every day, or sometimes longer, and so on and so forth. And it's not just the first responders, it's everybody that has to be out there to tell those stories, the photojournalists that are still active and making those images, heck, the people driving transport trucks, and the people receiving those goods and serving them to us to make sure society goes on. These are stories. I think that we might not be able to tell them now. I mean, in self-isolation, we need to be socially distant, but those stories will be told as time goes on. And I think it's maybe our duty to help those people and to help tell their stories in every way. It might be a resurgence in photojournalism.
Well, I want to take those stories and let's turn it into a good action item for everybody. For all of you that have blogs, and I think just about everybody does, this is the perfect time to run through the list of nonprofits in your community. And sometimes for something to go viral, not all of us have dogs that can skateboard and will get 1 million views on YouTube. But if you can get a few hundred people in your community to pay attention to the fact that, for example, and I don't know that if the timing is right here, but for example, the Alzheimer's Walk won't take place this year, or the Walk to Fight Breast Cancer may not take place if it's something that's coming up in the next 30 to 60 days, certainly, or maybe longer, and use your blog to remind people of the organizations that are out there that need help. And every community has got several dozen that are out there. Also, somebody had asked earlier about things you might be able to do. You've got your local hospital. I don't have the link here, but if you go to skipcohenuniversity.com and just Google Corey Schwartz, Schwartz, you'll find a story he did on a day in the life of Phoenix Children's Hospital. And he put the word out, and he wound up putting together a book project. The book was going to be sold in the bookstore, the gift shop, as a hardbound and a softbound version to raise money for the hospital. And I think if I remember right, he got 30 or 40 other people involved, and there were photographers and there were designers and editors, and everybody wanted to be a part of this. And it actually made it onto the 6 o'clock news that night in Phoenix. Well, we don't have the same ability to go into a hospital right now with your camera. It's not something that's going to be high on anybody's list or even allowed. But being able to share images and talk to people in the community and start to be the, what do you want to call it, the funnel to collect information about some of these nonprofits that now have little support, that everybody is now hunkered down. Here's the time to use your blog and create an awareness. Sorry, that was very long-winded, but I want to thank Steve for reminding me to unmute my mic, which I did because I've got somebody outside with a weed whacker trying to trim, and it was getting a little noisy.
It never fails. They decide to do yard work as you're recording.
Always.
Every single time. Let me hit a couple of the things in the Q&A here really quick, because there's some interesting ones in there, and I want to start with actually Aaron. Aaron said, "Hi, Ann, you're my inspiration. In fact, I have one of your pictures right next to my bed." So that's absolutely awesome. Will said, "For all on the panel, I would appreciate suggestions for both working on skills and also for things we can offer the community. We're reaching out to medical and first aid responders offering portraits, once things have cleared up, at no session fee, and prints are 20% off. And Skip just went through, some things that you can do. I like this idea of, like a free portrait session for first responders. Anybody else have any suggestions on things can do, Anne?
I just wanted to tell everybody about, we're all in the first few days of self-isolation and bored out of our brains. And my daughter, and both of my daughters are, our daughters are photographers. One lives in Copenhagen and the other one's in Australia. And our older daughter, Stephanie, called me and said, hey, look, you need to do something on your Instagram. And, you know, we talked it through and we came up with this concept of, you know, we are all in this together. This virus is borderless, and it's everywhere around the world. And I thought, look, if I have really had a career based on spreading joy, why don't I start a campaign on my Instagram and say to people, send me a joyful photograph of your child or a child that you know. And not necessarily just a baby, but it needs to be joyful. And I'll share them all with you on my Instagram stories. And this started about, you can see it on my Instagram, and Geddes Official. And I post 10 images to stories every day. And so far I've just been inundated with these incredible images of these joyful children, and people telling me about their babies. But they're from 37 different countries so far. And it just goes to show that it's really a common theme. You know, people feel the same way about their babies wherever they're from in the world. And I think this is one of the reasons why people have really loved my imagery, because, you know, if you looked at one of my images and you're living in Russia, you wouldn't just think it's a Russian child or an Italian child or a Spanish child or an Australian or a Kiwi. And it's just been so joyful for me, right? Because I'm actually getting that wonderful couple of hours a day when I have to go through all these images and choose which ones to post, and I reply to everybody, and I send little messages to all of the kids, you know, who are in the photographs, like, hi, Emily, sending a big hug from Auntie Anne. And now everyone's coming back and going, hi, Auntie Anne, you know, we'll get you this, whatever you need, and so on. So, you know, that I would never have thought of that or doing something like that if we weren't all put in a situation where things are going to be different for us now. And there are some positives that come out of this, because we do have to think about things in a different way. And for me also, I've been revisiting my beautiful photographic book collection and just turning pages and looking at images and clearing my mind a little bit in terms of thinking about what I can do next. So, you know, you can spread joy in your community, and, you know, it's just something that really worked for me. So I hope it certainly inspires other people, even on the local level, you know, to just do something that makes other people feel better, but also makes you feel better as well. Because if you've got a clear mind and you're happy, that makes you more creative. So I'm more of an emotional photographer as opposed to talking about toilet rolls and scanning negatives. And
you mentioned going through old books, though, and actually I would even recommend find an old graphic design book. So if you want to help your composition, look in your house, ask a neighbor for a graphic design book. Look at that. It'll help you with understanding relationships of objects in a scene. Find old photo books. I mean, really old photo books. Look at classic art books. There's a number of things you can do as you're sitting at home to just improve the way you approach your photography before ever picking up a camera.
Correct. Oh, very much so, very much so. And you know what, here in New York at the moment, the blossoms are out everywhere. And we live right opposite Battery Park. And so we can walk out, we've got an elderly rescue dog, and we go across there, and it's just glorious, right? It's nature. And my work is very much in touch with nature, and you can still go out for a walk, right? And you can enjoy nature, and you can just calm your mind and start to think about what you want to say, right? And that's a common theme whenever I'm talking to people who ask me, you know, how they can do what I do, right? It's like, you have to tell your own story, right? That's why you're an artist. That's why you became an artist yourself. You can't do cookie cutter work, and there's a whole lot of cookie cutter work out there at the moment, right? But what is your story? So spend some of this time when you're in self-isolation really looking within yourself and thinking, how can I better tell my story so my work is unique to me, that it says something about me and not the same as the person down the road, or, you know, people, there's a lot of baby photography in that regard, you know, people need to step up a little bit and go, hey, I really need to look into myself and tell my story. Sorry, I go on a bit and tell me when to be quiet.
Nope,
We love it.
That's never going to happen. But on your point about people sending you images of happy kids, for those of you in communities that, I don't know, maybe you're in an older community and you're light on kids, the reason that people hire a professional photographer in the first place in the portrait social categories, and this will all come back after this is over, has always been brides, babies, pets. In that order, they haven't moved 1% in probably 30 or 40 years. Don't forget pets in there. Brides are going to be a little bit tough right now because that's one area that's hit the hardest, and will be, you know, those weddings will come back. But don't forget everybody's pets, and getting neighbors and friends in your community and people you don't even know to submit an image of, you know, what they're doing with their pups, you know, during this stretch of self-isolation. It's just another piece of information that you can share with your community to remind everybody that they're not alone. And in the process, start giving tips on how to take better images. You guys do things all day long that you take for granted with a camera in your hand, but mom and dad don't know about fill flash, they don't know about posing, they don't know about composition or exposure, and it doesn't matter if you're using a camera or your cell phone.
And just to piggyback off
will be wanting joy. Sorry to interrupt,
yeah.
Chamira. That's what they will be looking for. It's like the images after World War II, and this is this generation's extreme drama in their lives, right? And everyone's afraid, and they're looking for joy. And that's what you need to be looking for in your communities, because that's what people will be craving. They will be so joyful when they can finally get out, and, you know, you want to capture, if you photograph humans, I'm saying, right? I mean, it's just going to be right there in front of you, and you can help to do images and spread images of joy within the community.
Well, and you really hit it on the head about this theme of joy. And just to piggyback off of that, the theme of spreading joy and sharing stories, I would encourage photographers to look back at their past portrait shoots from past clients and reshare those. Reshare those online, tell the story, even as far as keeping your creative skills sharp, since things are a bit dry as far as shooting new portraits. You could even go back to your old portraits and rework those, because it's always a time to resharpen your skills. And that also includes editing. Re-edit the photos, share those on Facebook, tell the story behind it and why it's so joyful. Tag the past clients, of course, because they'll love getting a shout out, and just spread those warm, good vibes.
And let me, since you talked about editing past photos, let me just throw in a tip for everybody. If you just want to change your photos really quick, if you're a Lightroom user, if you did a photo a long time ago, it's probably the Lightroom engine 2 or 3, and the current Lightroom engine is 5 for processing design. So if you just go into Lightroom and change your image from processing engine 2, I did this yesterday actually to a couple of shots, to processing image 5, the current version, you'll see you may end up having to fix some things or change some things, but it's a good starting point just to get better processing, updated software processing, and then rework the photo from there. Don't just go straight to the sliders at the basic panel. Make sure you update the processing engine first as well. Did you want to do more questions now, Skip?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions.
I'm sorry. There's
a lot of them in there.
Used to you jumping in. There's a good one there for. Hang on a minute. I saw one for Ann.
It's from Daniel.
Yep.
Oberdanner, and the question is for Ann. It says, "How are you getting these beautiful ideas? And when you have them, how do you preserve them for later? You know, it's the old, you have a song idea while you're sitting and eating dinner. How do you put these in your head so that you can then get back to them and process that concept or idea later?"
Well, For me, I'm always thinking about it. That's how like if I wake up in the middle of the night, and, you know, at 4 o'clock in the morning, you're always thinking of the worst things and you start to panic about this, that, or anything else. I lie there and imagine beautiful imagery, right? And it's not one specific image, right? It's more of an approach to how you would do things. And I don't even come back and write them down or anything like that. They seem to resurface at the right moment, just when they're needed. But I think it's really important to be inspired by your subject matter. And you know, I used to laugh. This hasn't happened to me so much recently, but when I was first starting out, and with the calendars and the greeting cards and everything, people would say to me, "So when are you?" You know, they'd say, "Oh yeah, I used to photograph babies when I was first starting out," right? And with the implication that then I went on to something more important, and I was like, what are you talking about? I mean, they are everything to me, right? Because of what they represent, purity and the beginnings of new life, and their connection with nature, and the way they change families, the way they transform a man and a woman into parents instantly. And there's nothing more compelling to me than to continue telling that story. So the first thing that you need to do is make sure that you're passionate about your subject matter, because out of that passion will come the creativity. And you should never photograph with blinkers on. You should always be open to your own emotional response to whatever's in front of you. I'm not a big person to talk about cameras, right? The way I think about it is, the camera is just a vehicle for me, right? It's from my heart to that subject matter is what ends up in the camera. And if you do that, if you're passionate about what you're doing, you'll be able to always create imagery that's new and fresh. And speaking about going back to images that you shot a long time ago, I did a book that came out with Tashin called Small World the year before last, and of course I had to go back through all of my archives, and I did solely portraiture for the first 10 years of my career, right? 2 portrait sessions a day, 5 days a week, and a lot of the time I was just doing it all by myself. And going back on some of that work, I was quite surprised, you know, that beautiful, simple black and white imagery. And, you know, sometimes you can get a little bit cluttered. You can make things a little bit too complicated, when simple is the best thing, right? And that applies to absolutely any subject matter. Simple and emotional is the best thing. It's a human connection you're after if you're photographing humans anyway.
Let me clear a couple of these other questions off. One person wants to know, Don, on your do-it-yourself slide scanner, do you have instructions for that somewhere?
Not yet, but I should probably redesign this with the simplest possible ingredients that everybody does have at home, like that toilet paper tube, and publish that within the next week. So follow me and you'll probably see that, because that's a fun idea.
Now you're going to start another run on toilet paper.
Yeah. Yeah, now you've created a market for the leftover part of the toilet paper, just the roll.
I did hear a story a while back out of Australia that the shortage is horrible, and that one of the newspapers in one of the communities ran 8 blank pages in the paper. So I thought that was especially creative.
And since we're talking about all resources, it's probably a good time to go through some of these websites.
That's a great idea.
So let me pull these up really quick. And we'll do that right there. And there you go. So everybody should be seeing the websites now. And the first one is from Digital Photo Pro. It's resources for photographers during the coronavirus crisis. And they're talking about what's happened. They're talking about PPA offering free access to more than 1,100 classes. Scott Bourne brought this up the other day as far as Adobe giving students access to Creative Cloud. And in fact, anybody can pretty much get 60 days. If you go in to cancel your Creative Cloud membership, there's a point where they offer you offers to stay. It's their customer retention program, and you can get 2 months for free, or at least you could a couple of days ago. So a lot of different things here, and I'll make sure that, Skip, you have the link to this so that you can put it in the blog post. But again, that's resources for photographers from the Digital Photo Pro. The next one is, I don't know how many people on the panel know Aaron NACE, but the guy is just brilliant. I love Aaron. And they've created on the Flern website a resource of COVID-19 resources for photographers and creatives. And there's like 100 of them here. And notice they're grouped. So software, grants, finances, selling for photographers. You've got Photomoto doing things, Photo Shelter, 500px. And there's all these different categories. Let me get back to the top. I apologize if it's making you dizzy on the screen. Resources, international, education. So that's on Flern. And again, I'll make sure that Skip has the link for that. This is one. Don, do you want to talk about this one?
Oh, yes. So if you are stuck at home and in front of your computer and you're wondering how you can possibly find a different business model or just kind of make good on what you already have. Now, we talked about it 2 days ago on this same show about copyright. And there's a resource that I use quite reliably called infringement.report. That's the URL. Report is a top-level domain. So it's infringement.report. Just type that into your web browser, and you'll get there. For, I think, $25 a month US, I get to upload 300 of my images, and it scours the internet and finds every place they show up online. I'll find my own legitimate places for them, but you'll also find a lot of people that have taken your work without permission, license, compensation, etc. And now's the time maybe not to necessarily go after them because everybody's hurting, but at least start making a list of these. The reason why I recommend infringement.report is they have no skin in the game in terms of legal action. There's no right of first refusal where if they find something, they have the legal right to go after it. They have no interest in that.
Like
so
Pixie
you can
does.
Like Pixie, even image rights, which is great, and I use them for international stuff, but I don't use it for domestic things because I like to have a one-on-one relationship with my own legal team in Canada or the US. So, if you want to find your images and send them off to, Mr. Ed Greenberg we were talking about 2 days ago, or, Leslie Burns, who I've used out of California, or Pixel IP, Evan Anderson over there. There's so many different lawyers that are willing to work with photographers to help them defend their rights and to really change this tide, because everybody that finds things online thinks it's just free to use and then uses it instead of actually licensing and paying the creatives what they are due. So do yourself a favor and do the entire industry a favor, and make sure that you are looking for your work and defending it when you can. You're not going to find it all, and a lot of it's going to be non-commercial. But if you should have been paid for a job, I think you still should get paid for it.
And before I bring up Skip's link, I just have to show that's a photo of Don's child. Just ever so cute. And while that's up there, we'll set in the Q&A that Blake Rudis is offering 14 days free on his Elite Education, and it comes with a discount for life. So we've got that. So Don, did you take that, I'm assuming?
I did. I was channeling my inner Anne when I took that photograph.
Send it to me, direct message on my Instagram, and I'll post it. It's very cute.
I will. Thank you.
So wonderful. Here's yours, Skip.
Yeah, I was on the phone with Bobby Lane yesterday, and Bobby Lane was talking about she had just discovered that if you've got a Fannie Mae mortgage, there's a long list of things there that you can do that will give you a hand in terms of mortgage payments, including stepping away from it for, I believe it's up to 6 months. Now, all the specifics are in here, but again, all of these links at the end of each day or very early the following morning, I'm trying to put everything into one summary email so that you've got the links, because it's really hard to remember them right here. So if you've got a Fannie Mae mortgage and business is just suddenly dried up, which has happened to a lot of people right now in terms of revenue streams, here's an opportunity to delay a little bit of the pain and get yourself through this mess.
And one last link this is from Brent Watkins in the Q&A, and it's a PPA link that we're in there together, and they have a bunch of resources here on PPA as well. government resources. You don't have to log in for it or anything like that. And there is a question in here for Chamira.
Yes.
And Chamira, this one says, let me find it again. I lost it.
From Daniel.
There it is. Yeah, from Daniel. You want to take that one?
Sure. So Daniel said, just check your pictures while they're so natural. Thank you, Daniel. Well lit, transporting so much joy. That's the goal. As far as a special angle that I shoot from, I do try to keep it simple. I mostly work with businesses in the area, and I find that a lot of them are busy. And so when I come in for a photo shoot, I come to them. They see that as a service. They have a lot going on. So I try to keep it quick. I try to keep it simple, just using the hospital as an example, because doctors, surgeons, it's usually the last thing on their list is coming and get their portrait taken. So as far as the angle, this is really simple. I just sit them down in a chair. I stand slightly above them. The women really, really appreciate, because, it's all about angles and minimizing any kind of imaginary or real double chin that we all think we have. As far as lighting, I use the Mega JS Apollo 50 inch. I think it's 50 inches. It's large, it's forgiving. Some might say it's overkill for a lot of the headshots that I do, but I find that it's just nice, soft, even light all around. It's funny because the clients that I shoot with, when they see it, for some reason, as intimidated as they are for the portrait session, the light or not the light, but the softbox, looks very professional. And they just assume you know what you're doing when they see that thing. As far as editing, I just go standard from Lightroom to Photoshop. I finish it off with Perfectly Clear. And that's if you have not heard of Perfectly Clear, I think it's a standalone plugin now, or standalone application. I use it as a plugin in Photoshop. And it just gives it a really nice, natural finishing touch. So, yeah. And thank you.
And I'll grab one here because Michael Mitchell in Indiana said, Skip, Dawn and I have been doing this. We were talking about getting involved in your community and sharing ideas, which is interesting. He's got a Bourbon Blog, and they've been telling everyone where they can get hand sanitizer from their local distilleries.
You had me at Bourbon Blog.
All right. And I must have missed it. I've been with Michael before and didn't know he was a bourbon drinker. So that's going to change the next time we're together.
Yeah, put the link to that in here so that I can get that to Skip too, because people are going to want to know where your Bourbon Blog is.
Okay.
Let's see, what else do we have here? There's a film question there from Boris. It's a little bit technical, so let's go and just do this one from Daniel. Dear Anne, when my first son was born, we got one of your books. By the way, he was born September 13th. So you are so much connected with us. Is that your birthday, I'm guessing?
Yeah, right.
Fantastic. Somebody commented on the Perfectly Clear being pretty sick. And then most credit card companies, this is from will lower interest rates payments or even give you a few months of grace so it never hurts to call. So that's another good thing. If you are running a business, a photography business, and you're having issues right now, don't be afraid to reach out to people. Like from the Apple Card, I even got a notice saying, look, we understand times are hard. Call us if you got an issue. So don't be afraid to do that. And Michael put his Bourbon Blog in there. So we'll share that in the blog post if Skip is willing to as well.
Oh, of course I am.
Everybody's thumb upping that one. By the way, in the Q&A, you can click a thumbs up to raise things up. And I had a question for you. You, with the way your career has gone, I mean, and the fact of, how your fame kind of came about with this type of, you literally kind of created a style of photography. As you were in it in the early days, as you were doing those creative, unique children's shots, did you know at the time how big that was going to become as a trend? Did you know what you were creating at the time, or was that completely out of your mind?
Look, a lot of people remember my work from my first coffee table book, Down in the Garden, and I think that's the one that you're referring to. And, it's like anyone who writes a book or shoots for a book, you're always doing it before the book actually comes out. And Down in the Garden was such a massive success, and it really took me by surprise. I always wished that I had said on the cover somewhere, this is a children's story, right? It's not to be taken that seriously. And, babies in flower pots. And I used to joke to my family for many, many, many years afterwards, like, what if I got a tattoo of a flower pot on my forehead, right? Because that's all that people talk about. And really, our girls were young when I was shooting that book, and I love children's books. I just think they're really clever in how they appeal to the purity of a child's mind. And so I went and shot Down in the Garden, and it was not supposed to be art. It was not supposed to be anything serious. It was just me having fun very early in my career. And the catalyst for driving Down in the Garden way up the New York Times bestseller list was Oprah Winfrey and Celine Dion, and neither of them I knew at the time. But if you want to hear this story, I'll be quick with it. Every year magazines, had celebrities talk about their 10 things that they're giving for gifts and things like that. And Celine had my book Down in the Garden, which had just come out at the top of her list. And someone told me about that, and I just didn't think much of it. And then the next thing, the Oprah Winfrey Show called, and I was living in New Zealand at the time. I'm Australian, and we lived there for 18 years. And that's where a lot of my images were created. And I'd never watched the Oprah Winfrey Show, but they said, we want you to come on the show. And, so I'd go over to Chicago and go on Oprah's show with the live audience. And she carried out 2 little newborn babies in bumblebee outfits. And we did this interview, and at the end of the interview, she held up Down in the Garden and said, this is the best coffee table book ever, right? And it just went whoosh, straight up the New York Times bestseller list, and the rest is history. By that time I'd gone back to New Zealand and thankfully, wasn't actually involved in all of that hoopla, but in a way it wasn't supposed to be that famous, right? I saw myself as doing different work after that, which I went on to do, but still now it's Down in the Garden all the time. And now that I'm 63, right? I think I've come to terms with the fact that I have to embrace it, and that it has spread so much joy around the world, but please, it was never meant to be art. And people still copy it now, right? A lot of these joy images that are coming in, they think that that's what I want. And I'm like, oh God, please, no more flower pots. I haven't photographed a baby in a flower pot since 1994. I'm not very good at maths, but anyway. So, I talked too long.
We've got a really big flower pot out back, and I may sit in it and have Sheila take a picture of me. Let's get away from babies and put adults in flower pots.
Yeah. Well, I've done 7 books, right? And Down in the Garden is the one that people just, oh my God, I love that, which is nice. Now I can embrace it like the adult that I am.
I now can't get the picture of Skip in a flower pot out of my mind.
Yeah.
This image has
Thanks
to
for
exist.
that imagery that will
I'm
last
sorry, everybody.
all the
Thanks
time
for
that I'm quarantined at home. Yes. Yeah,
Hey,
Ant just chimed in and said, my eyes.
Oh, this is going to carry on long after today. I want to just raise a question now, and we've got a couple more Q&As. I see the screen moving. I don't know if we've got new ones in there or we've covered most of them. But in terms of this program, just as a reminder, and I forgot to tell everybody then yesterday, but if everybody here could bring one friend tomorrow, I mean, we're putting out some great content. All of you have given us some incredible feedback this week. I do the post with the links. The video is up on my YouTube channel. Chamira gave me a suggestion today of why not just put the YouTube right into the post, which is a really good idea. But if you could just spread the word, we all know so many people, and I think everybody is just getting bombarded with programs either like this or we're back to hunkering down and maintaining social distance across everything they do. If everybody could just bring a guest tomorrow, Joe McNally is jumping in, will be our guest tomorrow. And then
so I am so excited, by the way, for Joe McNally. I have his videos, and he was the keynote speaker at Photoshop World this year in August in Las Vegas last year. And if you've never seen Joe McNally, if you've never watched Joe McNally speak or tell a story, or for that matter, breathe, just trust me, he's that good. You want to be here for that. Just absolutely an amazing guy to watch. I've never met him, but yeah, I'm going to be fanboying tomorrow.
Well, I got to introduce him 5 years ago or 4 years ago at Skip Summer School, a program that I was doing then. And I introduced him as literally, I said, everybody's got one hero in this industry, and Joe is mine. And one of my bucket lists was to have dinner with Joe McNally. And that night when he got in, before his program the following day, Sheila and I were able to get out to dinner with him. So I highly recommend everybody, but everybody that we've had on as a guest has absolutely added to the ideas. And all of you know somebody out there who is totally loaded with anxiety, that is frustrated, that is feeling isolated, that is feeling alone. Somebody sent me a cute picture where they had duct taped their kids to the floor. Just
as one would do.
As one would do, and I get it. Just invite them to join us tomorrow. We are then going to go to once a week, probably Wednesdays, where we'll do the F64 lunch bunch every Wednesday starting next week. But I just wanted to get that in now as opposed to rushing it at the very end before we lose a few people.
In fact, Stephen in the Q&A had asked, are we doing it on the weekend too? No, we're going to go to the next Wednesday thing. But somebody else had, or actually I wanted to mention, one other thing that you can do, because Skip and I were talking yesterday, and we know that because everybody's home, social media is blowing up. So I would normally get a couple hundred tweets in a day. Twitter is my preferred social media. I like Twitter a lot. And I'd go through every single tweet and just scan through them. Well, now I've got 1,800 tweets every day because everybody's home and everybody's tweeting. And so what happens is if a tweet goes out that's important, that you would think was important if you saw it, gets lost in the mix. So here's just a tip for you. You can create, for example, on Twitter, but most social media have some, relative equivalent to this. You can create your own lists. So I have a media list of all the people I follow that are in media. I have a photographer's list of all the photographers that I follow. And then I have a Steve's Faves that if I'm pressed for time, I pull that list up, and just the tweets from the people that really matter that I think I might want to take action on are in there, so that you don't miss the notifications of these shows. Now's a good time as you're sitting at home. Sit down, make yourself some custom social media lists so that you can also better consume the data that's coming in front of you.
Great advice. I want to add another thing you could do during this downtime. For those of you that have blogs, and I've always said you've got to post twice a week. If you're not posting on the same 2 days every week, then put your blog away until you can build up a stash. Well, now is the time to build up that stash. And I'll go ahead and we'll publish a blog post. I think I've got a post I did a while back that had 30 or 40 different ideas for blog content, including what I mentioned earlier, tips on how to be a better photographer, contests that you can do in your community, events that are going on, put a community calendar together. Even though physical events are going to be postponed for a little while now, think about events that are going to be going on online. Also, for those of you that are senior photographers, this is a tough year for high school seniors that are coming down to the last lap in their high school education. And there's a good chance that for most of them, there aren't going to be any big graduation ceremonies. Well, as a senior photographer, think of the value of those images that you shot a few months back when life was relatively normal, and how important those memories are going to be to the families now. Think about things that you can do with those for those families who are your clients.
And let me just hit a couple of these before we get too close to the end here. Steven said people should put this in their calendar to remind them. Yes, you can put it every Wednesday you can put it in for tomorrow, but every Wednesday going forward as a recurring one until further notice. So make sure that you do that. And Cap Mizan put in, Steve, I'm somewhat new to Zoom. I was sent a link for today, but is this something I can subscribe to in order to be notified when it's happening? And it will be the same link. So the same link will work every time that we do this webinar, but you would need to put it in your own calendar as well.
But if you follow, I mean, I'm posting it regularly. Go to skipcohenuniversity.com, and in the blog, we're posting all the links from each day's lunch discussion, and then tying it in. There will always be a post on the morning of the next one, and then the following day, all those links.
This is an interesting one. Yeah, somebody chimed in here that they had a bunch of proms and graduations and everything get canceled. But Will posted a link, let me pull it up here really quick, from PPA. And it's, if you join PPA, you get a free gift, and you have a choice of a deep umbrella from Westcott, a spider holster, or a backpack. So,
and that's an ongoing program, because in the next round, I know Platypod has the Platypod Max in as the free gift.
Yeah.
So I don't know who the other companies are, but that is a regular program. That's another great one. And if you're not in PPA, now is a great time to become a member. Also, look at ASNP and APA depending on your photo specialty.
Yeah, good. Thank you for that, Will.
And I think we're kind of out of. Are we out of?
Yeah, most of the questions now
right
are more, other than when will Don's Frankenstein monster be complete?
I guess that's referring to my book that I'm still working on. That is just
I think they think you're making a Frankenstein monster, because except you don't have your propeller hat on, and you can't make Frankenstein without.
No, but I can put on my 3D glasses, and I can be just as fun, right?
Yes, that is true. That is true.
Yeah.
And leave it to Don to have a prop at his fingertips.
Yep.
Here I am.
All right. I think we're going to wrap up lunch today, unless anybody is sneaking any last questions. Oh, hang on a second.
You know what? There is one from Annette who said that she got the link from Facebook, and she clicked on the photo, but she doesn't see a URL to paste into her calendar. And Annette, I will post that in I know what Facebook group you got that from, IEPPV, and I will jump over there and I will share the link with you in a comment so that you've got it.
Terrific. What's the one? Who's 513? NoFilmSchool.com is listing free training resources.
Yeah, free. Let me look here. Well, I pulled up the site, but I don't see an easy link to the free training resources. Oh, Stuck in Quarantine. No, that's a film challenge. No, I don't see where it's free. And actually, just so that everybody knows, let me give you this really quick. Grab a pen and write this down. The Zoom meeting ID, you can always just go to zoom.us and click join a meeting. And here's the meeting ID. It's 311-4. I should have my glasses on right now, shouldn't I? 311-493-099. I need 3D glasses. So if you go to that meeting ID, 311-493-099 at zoom.us, that'll always get you in here as well.
And speaking of have your glasses on, I'll close with a very fast story. I bought Bonnie Raitt's album in New York years ago, and I threw it in the car on the way home, and I'm listening to it, and it's hard, ugly, acid rock, just not my style. And I couldn't figure out what she was doing until I put my glasses on and I'd bought Rat, the Detonator album. So
I actually emceed Rat years ago.
Wear your glasses. And Anne, any last pieces of advice? I mean, you guys are in New York, and you're right in the heart of the most craziness, I think, right now. Maybe second only to areas around Seattle and Washington State. Any words of wisdom and advice for everybody as we wrap it up today?
I think we just all need to stay positive and understand that really creative and beautiful things and joyful things can come out of the worst kind of situations. I think when everyone comes out at the end of this, we're all going to be different for a very, very long time, but we will all be better people because we've been able to look into ourselves. And, you know, it's like me with my Instagram and doing, you know, spreading joy around the world. I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have thought about that if we weren't in this sort of situation. And so, you know, beautiful little toadstools grow in forests. You know, they're always, things are popping up everywhere. Nature is still going on. It's still beautiful outside. You know, you can, the old saying, you can cut all the flowers, but you can't stop the spring. And that's what's happening here in New York. All the bulbs are coming up, and nature is just getting on with it. And that's what we all need to do, but just be a little bit kinder to ourselves. And don't feel the pressure that you have to be creative. Just do whatever calms you, you know. Spend the day reading a book, or, you know, we've got our old dog and we take her across the road and just enjoy nature and take a deep breath, everybody. Remember that, you know, we're all in this. All around the world, people are going through this. And I always think there's a reason for everything. I'm not a religious person at all, but I do think things are for a reason. And we're not sure what that is yet, but something good will come out of it.
And thank you so much for joining us today. Are we gonna let Cal sneak in on the corner over there, or no?
A couple times I saw his hand.
I mean, you know, just so there it is. All right.
There's the peanut gallery.
Right?
There it
not
is.
Encouragement at all. I'm telling you.
I'm gone now.
We'll be if there's a demand here, we'll be offering seats for live stand-up with Cal.
We can do couples therapy, maybe.
There it is.
And by the way, somebody just put in a question that I actually think is interesting. Michael did. Any thoughts on offering a buy now for a session? I'm assuming like a portrait or family session, but it gets taken later. So doing a buy now deal, you know, buy your session now for use at a later date as a marketing opportunity. Anybody have thoughts on that?
I think it's a great idea. I think that this is the kind of thing that if you want to kind of get some cash flow now where you know you're going to fill your workflow later, this is what wedding photographers do, right? I mean, you're going to book the wedding sometimes a year in advance, and then you do the work then, and you've got to take a down payment at that time, not the full rate. But that applies to just about every avenue of photography, not just portraiture.
I would also take it a step further and call your lab and just ask the question, what's new? And maybe tie it in with, I mean, we're all tired of canvas, but the rest of the world is not tired of canvas. I've got some gorgeous prints here that were on Performance EXT metal from Bay Photo. There's so many things that all the labs now offer. Bella Art prints out of Marathon. Look at some products out there and actually tie it in as you might want to tie it in as a blog post of things you can do with your images, and then be able to offer that as part of the portrait session down the road, because this is going to end. And when it does, our lives are going to be changing, and they have changed, and things will be different. There'll be a new normal, but the reality is that nothing is going to stop people from cherishing those memories that all of you guys can provide as artists.
They're going to be looking for us to share the joy, right? To do it through our imagery. And, you know, we just need to be ready for that.
Yeah.
Well said.
Thank you, everybody. And like I said yesterday, just like NYPD Blue, be careful out there. Everybody stay healthy.
Yes.
And we'll see you tomorrow at 2. And there's Don. And again, Ann, thank you.
It's
And
a pleasure. I loved being here.
no, it was great having you. All right.
Okay.
See everybody tomorrow at 2. And we'll have the update with all the links either later tonight, or it'll be up tomorrow morning by 9 Eastern Standard Time. Bye-bye, everybody.
Awesome.
See ya.